Our project is called Tutor 30. And the objective of our project is to assist the United Way in recruiting tutors for the Schools of Hope program, specifically looking at ways to encourage businesses to allow their employees to tutor during working hours. So our end product that we envision is to be able to provide the United Way with marketing materials that they can use to go to businesses and approach them about supporting their employees in being Schools of Hope tutors.
I want to, before I start talking, introduce two people that are here that are actually experts in Schools of Hope, Kathy Price and Karen Dishler in the back. They are co-managers of the Schools of Hope project for elementary. And actually Kathy's been with the project from the very beginning as well. And Karen joined the project just a few years after it got started, but always was involved in school-based volunteering. So between the two of them, they really have developed one of the most successful AmeriCorps projects, I think, in the country, because that's what the nature of this project is. So let me just go back a little bit. In 1995, with the Wisconsin State Journal and WISC TV Channel 3, we participated in a civic journalism project. John, I won't take all the history, I'll leave some for you. But let's just say it's the closest I've ever gotten to reporters in my entire life. Andy Hall and I knew where to get each other no matter what time of day it was.
Was that a good thing or a bad
thing? It was a good thing. I've never worked with anybody of that type of quality as Andy. He did a great job when he was working on this, and still in his work. But then we really convened a group of community leaders to take a look at issues in the Madison School District. And the Madison School District had sort of opened their doors, if you will, and were willing to be a part of this really critical, in-depth look at issues within the district. There had been a survey of community members, and there were 5 different areas that were being looked at, but one of them was academics, and the achievement gap was the issue that was being discussed. This wasn't new. It wasn't unique to our community. It's happening all across the country. But really, as our group, as this leadership group, and our president, Leslie Ann Howard, was chairing the group, as they started to look at this issue, there was this feeling that if there was anything that the community could do something about, it was the achievement gap. And as we talked with our leaders of color in the community and others about what do you think about this, if we really stick necks out and say we're going to do something, you know, are you behind us? Do you support that? And we had unanimous agreement that yes, we should do something about this. The district was on board as well as the university. We had, at one point, Kathy, we were meeting with like 16 university professors who were helping us to understand what the research was saying out there about the achievement gap and suggesting opportunities and programming that we might put into place. Out of that came the idea of what was initially called homework help, which we creatively turned into tutoring, because that's really what we were looking at. Certainly there had been lots of work done at the school district in terms of trying to turn the tide on the achievement gap, but it was felt that if we could do something really related to academics, that could make a difference. And so we looked at the research, and there was a suggestion. There's not a lot of research about volunteer programs for tutoring, but we found some. And there was a suggestion that if you could get trained tutors, volunteers, into the school during the day and have them working in concert with the teacher's curriculum, you can make an impact on a child's ability to read. At that point, our goal was reading at 3rd grade level by the end of 3rd grade. Anybody here know why? Why do we care about being able to read by the end of 3rd grade?
You read to learn.
After that, right? So you learn to read up to that. Who said that? Oh, David. Like, you really shouldn't know this, right?
I waited. I gave a few seconds.
You did. You were extremely patient. David was a loaned executive with us, and so he knows this. He's heard me say this millions of times. But up to 3rd grade, you read to learn. But after 3rd grade, am I right? You're learning, you're reading, you learn to read, then you read to learn. I always confuse that. So if children aren't reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade, they can easily keep falling behind. So we were able to, with Kathy Price's work and also a staff person at United Way, writing a grant to the Corporation for National and Community Service, secure vistas to be volunteer coordinators in the schools. That was our big barrier. was what could we do to support, I think all of you have probably heard about volunteer management being so important. And so what could we do to get rid of that hurdle? And so putting volunteer coordinators in the schools was key. Now, that was 1998, so we're 15, is my math right, 15 years later. We have AmeriCorps members. We're in every elementary school in the Madison School District, and we're in Sun Prairie in 4 schools, and in Middleton in 3. So we have a tremendous sort of growth that's happened in the elementary program, and these AmeriCorps members are phenomenal. Every year we have a class of 20. You're actually going to be with them a little bit later this morning. But they are truly making a difference for children. And we had an evaluation done last year that showed us the impact when a child is tutored based on the research model. Their growth in reading is exceeding that of students of similar backgrounds who are not getting Schools of Hope tutoring. So that's what we're here to talk about today, and to really help LGM, the Tutor 30 project, spread the word.
So I've been at CUNY Mutual for about 2 years, but I've heard from people who've been there 20 years, 15 years, that community involvement at the company from the employees has just skyrocketed. We had, I guess take Days of Caring as an example.
Yeah.
4 years ago we had like 40 people, and then the next year we had like 110, then 175. This year we had like 544. It's just like doubled every year how many people do it. And so that's one example, but it's everywhere. There's always, so my job is, a big part of my job is kind of managing employee fundraising on site for different things like March of Dimes and Komen and United Way. And it's just, it feels like every week there's a donation drive, or there's somebody wants to sell Jeans Say stickers or something, and it's just, we have to turn people away because we don't have room in our calendar to do more of it. So it's really neat to see kind of how involved employees are, and kind of their focus areas is what directs the actual corporate foundation dollars to, based on what employees want. So at CUNY Mutual Group, it's just, I've never seen another company that's so involved and gets their employees so involved in the community and in volunteering.
Candace, have you talked to any surveys with employees of what's their motivation?
Not motivation specifically. We do a survey every 5 years to kind of gauge, should we focus our dollars and our time on at-risk youth, environment, or homelessness, things like that. But motivation, we hear anecdotally a lot of people volunteer at their kids' schools or their church, or 3 Days of Caring. Actually, we've had a lot of tie-ins with that. So if someone goes and volunteers at like out of Leopold, then they want to keep doing more. Like, oh, did you know what they're doing? And they get their team involved. And so I think it's kind of what they know, mostly. But no, we haven't actually specifically asked why do you volunteer.
If I can jump in, because I work at CUNY Mutual with Candace, and I think the public relations side of the foundation that Candace works on is really what's motivating the employees. So if they know about opportunities, they're really eager to jump in. And I think that ties into what we're trying to do, is if you make it easy for an employee and you let them know what's going on, and you make it easy for them to.
So I also think there's this aspect that CUNY Mutual's done about team involvement. And so being able to be with your peers, but in a different environment, and feeling like you're a part of something and making a difference, I think that's also been a piece. There's some new projects that teams are working on, where they're actually going out and taking on an agency's particular issues. It might be IT, it might be marketing, it might be any other thing, but that team involvement also, I think, is a big motivator for people to know that they can do that.
And skills, so not just going and
Using their skills.
plucking weeds, so that it's obviously needed, but also like our product team adopted a nonprofit for a year and helped them do a commercial and kind of rebrand themselves, and they tripled their online donations the first month the commercial was out.
You also adopted a school, didn't you?
5 schools.
5 schools. So there you go. That's a very popular program with the Madison Public Schools Foundation, or Foundation for Madison Public Schools. And that's been successful as well at CUNY Mutual, to feel sort of ownership, getting involved. They tutor, but they also do other things for the schools as well. So.
I think it's like Kate said, making it very easy. So it's like, here's the online form, you sign up and bring the t-shirts to work, and here are the days you can pick them up, and getting it on people's calendars, kind of putting it in front of them. I think also we don't have a CUNY Mutual like, oh, you get 4 hours of volunteer work a year. or anything like that. It's kind of at your manager's discretion, but the managers and everybody's really behind it. So you can go to your manager and say, hey, like, I think our team should go volunteer. Like, okay, great, we'll pick something and let's go do it. And so I think just, it's very easy and they're very encouraged. You don't feel like, you know, you're asking some big thing by coming and wanting to leave the office. And I think that the team building and emphasizing the kind of skills development too really helps, because it just makes sense. You know, you get your team out using their skills in a new way. They're gonna come back energized and having a new perspective. They're gonna do good. I mean, it's, you know, it's just so, it just makes so much sense. It's so easy when you really look at all the angles. And it's making sure that managers are aware of that, you know, we share success stories like when our product team worked with Porchlight and we let people know like all the great things that they can do.
And it's contagious. So, Karen Dishler's she's recognized nationally for volunteer management expertise, and I think she'd agree with me. Your best recruiter is a volunteer. So once you get somebody in the company that's willing to go out and do something, they come back and start talking about it, you know, you don't need to be scared, there's somebody there to support you, they're gonna give you training, then it starts to mushroom. So really having somebody start to be the champion around those cubbies and getting them out of there.
Is that they encourage the volunteers to work to focus on one or two students. And I think that's a thing that keeps volunteers coming back, is that they build a relationship with kids. And the kids really look forward to that time of the week that the volunteer is going to be there. And you know, that's a high point for the kids. And I think that's it, they have a connection, and so they look forward to seeing each other when they come. Then the other thing that Kathy mentioned was the Teach for America volunteers, who have been great. I'm a teacher at Hegel School, which is in Southwest Madison off of Raymond Road, and we've had just wonderful Teach for America volunteers. And they take care of you know, letting the volunteers know when there's a day off from school or there's a field trip, so that you know, the volunteers are not disappointed when they get there and their tutee is missing. Just that kind of administrative things that they do for us, and also the training is so important. Mostly what we have our volunteers do is work on practice and fluency at 1st and 2nd grade. We have the tutors reread the books that they have read, that have been taught by the teacher in their reading group. And a lot of the kids don't have someone at home to listen to them read and support them. So we have the Schools of Hope volunteers do that, and it's such a valuable resource for us. And then the other important job for our Schools of Hope volunteers is working with the kids during math. And we have them do their practice math boxes and work on fluency with addition, subtraction, and multiplication. And the Teach for America volunteers do a great job training them. So, yeah, they've been really valuable for us. And then you also mentioned the Adopt a School program. Hegel was adopted by American Girl. And there are two things that they have done for us which have been invaluable. And that's providing backpacks at the beginning of the year. They just delivered 100 new beautiful backpacks for the kids whose families can't afford to buy them. And it's really important for the kids to start school with the backpack so they can be organized and feel confident. So that was wonderful, because that was a hurdle for us, having kids who did not have backpacks. We used to scrounge them up, and these are nice, new, beautiful backpacks so the kids feel like they're ready for school. And then the other thing that American Girl did for us last winter was they asked us to provide a list of kids who didn't have winter clothing, and you know what size they needed and they provided our students whose parents couldn't afford winter clothes. They had hats, mittens, jackets, snow pants, boots, the whole outfit, so the kids could go out to recess. That was great.
If I could just, what I think has helped the St. Mary's Community Outreach Program be successful, and I think one piece is that it is coordinated with and by a team of colleagues at St. Mary's that's called our Community Benefit Team. And one of the things that we identified as a need is to really be strategic about what areas we wanted to be involved in and prioritize. And it sort of leads into the second dot point on your sort of the prep questions about why we got involved. And community is one of our values at St. Mary's. And so what we look for is mission alignment between our community partners and making sure that, you know, we're looking for opportunities that address health or wellness related issues. And through that process, I think it helps our employees feel engaged that they're giving back to community, because it could be something as simple as bringing, you know, something from our pediatric nursing staff to community through our Adopt a School partnership. We also have adopted a school, Lincoln Elementary School, and I had a little handout about our partnership. But having, you know, a sort of a strategic mindset around our community outreach efforts and prioritize those really has helped, because as someone else said, I mean, we get requests from all throughout the community on a variety of different topics, and even within our organization, and sometimes those align with our overall goals and plans, and sometimes they're a little bit outside, but how we can make sure that they're aligned with our strategic plan overall is really helpful. Because we can't, I mean, we would love to do everything that we're asked and requested, we don't have the resources, so I think that's been an advantage for me in sort of overseeing the program, is really to make sure that we're aligning with our mission and values and our overall strategic plan.
Just with a couple of thoughts. First, it strikes me that you really had invited the right people on the panel here, and that, you know, St. Mary's and Freedom Mutual particularly are just like the poster children, I think, for community involvement and community service. Just really great organizations. I have, and Kathy did a great job on the overview as sort of the historical perspective. I don't want to kind of repeat all that, but I do have for the team in front here, I've got a handout for you that it's just kind of a compilation of a lot of the stories that we've done about Schools of Hope over the years, and the Tutor program specifically. There are some in here as well. And a couple of interesting things. One is that it's just sort of, again, serendipitous that the first story that we ever published about the project, the Schools of Hope project, was on August 27th, 1995. That was a Sunday. It was Andy Hall that wrote this story, and Phil Brinkman, who is now our city editor of the newspaper. Phil was an education reporter at the time, and he wrote a kind of the lead story, and the second story was kind of about the formation of the project. But it's interesting that Andy's lead says, Madison school district residents and leaders are being asked to work together to decide what's expected of public education and how to resolve major issues facing the schools. Schools of Hope is being organized by the Wisconsin State Journal and WISC-TV as an experiment in, quote, civic journalism. The project will gather residents' views about public schools, assess strengths and weaknesses in the school system, and explore solutions to problems. It is intended to help residents define what they expect from their schools and to give them a voice in influencing the school system. Yeah, 18 years later, I think you know, that thing is still going, and those challenges are still there. One of the other thoughts that struck me as I was flipping through, and I'll send these down the line here in just a minute, but it is, again, over the years, the challenges of engaging the community and engaging parents and residents in the process, is these folks all know is no easy thing. And we've written, I couldn't tell you how many stories, but we've written a lot of stories over the years about the project in general and about the tutoring element specifically, and the need for more tutors. So that's the front of the packet, is that first kickoff story. At the back of the packet is a story that we wrote, or an editorial we wrote in February of this year, touting the Schools of Hope is working and it should expand, and that was based off of a story earlier in February of this year about study that reporting the tutoring aids achievement, and right before that there was a story that said that the front page story in, well, I guess it's 2 years ago now, in 2011, the headline says we are in desperate need, and that had to do with tutors. And nearly 900 local students are on waiting lists for tutors, and that was 2 years ago. So it is an interesting evolution of the project to watch and to kind of reflect back on. Our role at the newspaper, again, civic journalism, in the mid-90s, civic journalism was sort of in its heyday, you might say. It was all about news organizations sort of changing the focus a little bit from the traditional simply reporting on problems, if you will, to becoming a little bit more involved in ideally working towards solutions. And there was an editor at the paper at the time, Frank Denton was the editor at the newspaper at the time, and Frank had been here for a long time and was very involved, and he really drove the Schools of Hope project in terms of the newspaper's involvement. Our role has kind of ebbed and flowed, honestly, over the years, over the course of time. We still certainly have a very strong commitment to it, partially because we really still value that original attachment that we had as a founding partner to the project. And we certainly very much value what's going on today in the effort with public education. On our opinion page every year we put out our sort of platform, if you will, of priorities, and I don't know how long it goes back, but for quite a number of years now, reform and improved public education has been one of our planks for a long time, and we see this certainly as a key part of that and as an element to help do that. So we have that commitment, and I just would say to the group, the team working in this particularly, that we would be ready, willing, and able to engage with you, at some level, that if we could be of assistance, I'm sure that we want to do that. So,
I will target towards Stephanie and Candace. And that is, as I said at the beginning, one of the objectives is for us to develop some marketing materials for the United Way. And one of the things we'd like to include is, you consider allowing your employees to volunteer during work hours, and here's some maybe benefits to your business that you can expect to realize by supporting your employees in their endeavors. So I'm wondering if you can maybe share some benefits that St. Mary's and CUNY Mutual have enjoyed through allowing the people to volunteer during working hours.
Go ahead, I'm thinking of some examples that I would want to hear.
So I guess I'll try and think of some that are more related to tutoring. So one of these schools we've adopted is Hamilton Middle School, and our actuary department has actually adopted their math classes, and so they go in and co-teach the math classes once a week. They've been doing it for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. And again, it's one of those things where even though the leader turned over, there was somebody new to step in, and they keep doing it. And it's all during the birthdays of the school. But they love it. It's a great bonding time for the actuaries. They get to learn how to, they all like math, so it kind of helps keep them interested in what they're doing, and they get to teach math in exciting ways. Maybe the teacher, because of everything else going on, doesn't have time to sit and spend, however many hours brainstorming how to teach this one lesson. So they can do that. They give the teachers a break. It's a new way for the kids to look at math and see kind of what jobs they might be using math after. And so I think, again, to Kathy's point, that for us it's more of the team component that really makes it an easy sell. I know we have somebody else who's been tutoring at Glenn Stevens Elementary, which is 2 blocks away from CUNY Mutual. He's been doing it for years, and he brings the kids over for a field trip every year, and they get ice cream, and they get to see the campus, and that's one individual, but I think for him, one of these things is proximity. I mean, it's right there. It's, you know, it's not 2 hours of tutoring and then an hour to get there, an hour back. It's, you know, a 5-minute walk there and back. So one thing that Kate and I have kind of talked about is having, you know, coming to a specific business with a map or something and saying, here are all the schools around you that have, you know.
Great lead-in.
Yes.
Katrin put this together for the rest of the group. So let me just, because you touched on a couple of major things in our project. First of all, we named our project Tutor 30 because we wanted it to sound like, when you boil it all down, what we've learned is that the actual tutoring time tends to be about a half an hour with the student. Add that with the travel time, you're talking about maybe committing an hour once a week or every other week or however we can figure out to structure this. So that's kind of where our name came from, so that kind of goes to the let's make it easy for the employee. And the second thing that we thought of as a team was to put together a map, and all these stars are the elementary schools. And I'll take one more step back and say that we decided Schools of Hope does a lot of different tutoring at a lot of different levels, both math and reading. We chose as a group to really focus on the 3rd grade reading, so we chose to really focus on elementary schools just as a starting point. So the stars are all the elementary schools around Madison, and the objective of the map was to say, okay, well, my office is right here, so what school is the closest to me is, you know, and just to see how close really an elementary school is to where you work. To try to, again, make it as easy as possible. And actually we have handouts that we can give out to you guys at the end as well, where there's the map on one side and then the legend on the back. So exactly to your point that you might have a school 2 minutes away, and maybe if you don't drive that way, you might not even know it's there. So hopefully trying to make the matching a little bit easier.
I think you've done a fabulous job engaging with the teams, and it's giving me some ideas of ways that we could help sort of broaden the scope of our St. Mary's engagement with our Adopt a School partner at Lincoln. We have tried multiple times to help link employees in a tutoring capacity at Lincoln, and one of our challenges is the staffing schedules, and I guess because we're a healthcare organization and the staffing is needed for patient care, there's not always as much flexibility with staff leaving to go to the school. And so some of the ways that we've tried to engage our staff is related to specific partnership activities that might have a small tutoring component, but it doesn't have sort of the ongoing relationship piece, so it's more snapshot. So one example is we have an annual Mission Days program, and staff members can sign up to have a community experience, and there are several different options to choose from, and one of them is the Lincoln School option. And so staff can go to Lincoln School and tutor with a child for an hour and a half or 2 hours in that snapshot. And the feedback that I get is that staff who go to Lincoln and engage in that kind of experience really enjoy it. It's very rewarding and meaningful. It's a way for them to sort of step out of maybe a patient care role and enter into a different kind of care role that is just as rewarding. And so stepping out of the walls of the hospital and engaging in community is something that they intend to do, but it's kind of getting that momentum of keeping that up that I'm having a challenge with, quite honestly. And so hearing about the team approach is interesting. And thinking about teams on units and getting, a unit or department engaged, I think would be a really good way for us to expand that beyond these kind of snapshot partnership opportunities where either kids come to us for a part of a day or we're going there for a mission day experience. Yeah. So
they wanted to do one at Right Middle, and we, in our office, in our newsroom, we have space available. You might have heard there's been some slight downsizing in our industry over the years. As a result, we had a bunch of open desks, honestly, and we just kind of had a natural spot. So on Wednesday afternoons, every Wednesday from, well, in the school year it was 3:30 to 5. In the summer now it's 1 to 5. about 10 or 12 kids that are going to middle schoolers at Wright Middle come in to our newsroom, and they have their own newsroom kind of embedded in our newsroom now. And you know, it's really been a wonderful experience, and honestly, again, we don't have a whole lot to do with it. They are kind of self-contained, but just the presence, I think their presence and our presence together has been a nice dynamic, and it really has been a really neat experience for us. And again, that one almost had all to do with proximity. If this were 8 blocks away or 10 blocks away, it would be much harder to do. But literally, the kids can walk down the street to our office, and so I think there's a lot to be mined out of those proximity relationships, maybe.
I think there's some ownership.
I am a millennial.
Yeah.
So,
That's why we have such a hard time relating.
so I personally, I can't speak for everybody, but I would agree with that, and I know. So one of the big things that we did this summer is we had about 100 staff who went out to John Muir Elementary, one of our adopted schools, and helped build. They have teaching gardens, so the kids can go out and work in the gardens and grow food. And we had probably 15, 20 of our interns who tagged along and came with, and they loved it. They were so excited. They ended up doing 3 more different volunteering projects over the summer that they kind of planned and did on their own. We do a corporate responsibility report every year that kind of highlights our environmental sustainability initiatives and also our volunteering, and that goes to any candidates who come on site for interviews. It gets handed to new staff when they start. I was asked to speak as part of the intern orientation for about an hour, talking about the foundation and philanthropy and how you get involved and everything that we do, and I know we had a lot of people follow up after that. So I think we've definitely seen it, at least at CUNY Mutual.
I think Kathy Martinson, who's the Senior Director for Community Engagement at United Way and actively involved in our volunteer center, would say that that's definitely the trend that we're seeing, and it's something that I think companies are trying to respond to, which is why it's perfect to do this project and offer another approach. Personally, my son, who's also a millennial, is at a company in the Twin Cities that also is like huge in volunteer involvement and getting folks out. And I hear more stories about what he's doing volunteering than what he's doing at work. So I think, just from that one personal experience, I think it is very much so. And our loan executives, we get a number of millennials that are loan executives with us every year, and they're very excited about the opportunities they get as loan executives to learn about the nonprofit community and explore opportunities. So.
I would say too, I don't think it's just millennials, I think it's kind of a general shift. I know we had an SVP position, Senior Vice President, that was open, and I was told that all 3 of the kind of final candidates specifically asked how we are involved with the community and what we do and what they could do if they worked there.
Excellent.
And they were
awesome.
Not millennials.
So you're saying the older ones can do that too?
Yeah.
Excellent. For all of you non-millennials.
Jane, just to interject, so I do some research, and I just completed a research project for a local employer. I did some there were employee focus groups that we did with the company, and when we talked to them about their company's commitment to the community and how important that was, one of the things that they pointed out, and I think that this is worth thinking about in terms of marketing something like this, is for them, it meant work-life balance was much better, because it's something that they all want to do and they wish they could do, but then they've got family time after 5, etc. And so the fact that their employer was helping them achieve work-life balance by giving them an opportunity during the day to volunteer, they had more allegiance to that company. Kind of like, I'm going to stick, with this company because they're helping me achieve the work-life balance that I'm looking for.
Thanks.
I'll add to that. When I think what's important too is that organizations allow opportunities that individuals can get their families involved in too. So I think that's important. We see a lot at St. Mary's and Stephanie can talk about things that happen on the weekends even, that you can bring your whole family to, whether it's a race or a volunteer thing. And so you can get your family started from a young age. I think that plays into the work-life balance as well.
And having parents model that for their children, I think, is a great lesson. And sort of like Dan is saying, we have an events page on our stmarysmadison.com internet that has all kinds of run, walks, kid triathlons, bike rides and so on, and we really try to encourage families to participate in that and demonstrate that power of community engagement and volunteerism starting as a young age. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
To figure out a way to make it realistic for the small 5-person office and the large. And our group is made up of employers that have that range. When we were choosing our panelists, we wanted to choose, the models to hear from, but certainly we understand the challenges that we're gonna face. Number one, introducing this idea to smaller employers, and two, like Stephanie said, where either you have, patient care where it is prohibitive of letting people go during the day, or, a more kind of an hourly staff kind of position where you might not just, for me, as a professional services type of person, I can make up my work. It doesn't have to be done between 8 and 5, but there's certain jobs that do need to be done between 8 and 5. And I think those are the ones where I think we're gonna face the most challenge. But yeah, we wanted the best and the brightest on our panel today, so I don't know if the group has any more thoughts.
I would say great question. We realize that's the
you want to join our
challenge.
group.
And so our direction has really been to challenge those type of companies and work with their, we'll say HR or their group to understand what are the challenges, how can we work with you to break through those challenges. But we don't have, today sitting here, I don't think we have the answer, but that's part of our group, that's what we're working through.
One solution we did discuss, oh, I'm sorry, was just kind of tag teaming, so, on a given week, 1 week I will go, 1 week Mandy will go, back and forth, and so that there's somebody to cover. But I think it's really an open discussion with the business about what's gonna work for them. And I think it's just an evolving process, but that's at least one solution that potentially could work. The other thing is we're meeting with the Business Volunteer Network, that Candace is also a part of, to kind of discuss with a large group of employers what are those challenges and maybe brainstorm some ideas of how we can kind of overcome some of those.
I think the way I was looking at it, one of the selling points that was brought up was that Tutor 30 really emphasizes that 30 minutes. So it is, like you were saying, I'm basically just ripping off what Kate said. It's 1 hour a week for one individual. If you tag team with 2, it's every other week. So it's actually a very flexible program. Sometimes when people start thinking of volunteering and tutoring, they're like, oh, that's gonna be like a 2 or 3 hour commitment maybe, if not per day, per week. But in actuality, I think it's getting that information of this is actually what the program is. It's not maybe what people are thinking of in their minds apparently, like all my employees are gonna be gone. Well, it's actually, like I said, 1 hour per week, and that could even be over like a lunch break kind of deal, like you have lunch break when you're tutoring with a child. So it's getting that kind of information, making sure we're clear to potential tutors, like obviously the benefits, but also the logistical reality of what it is.
So I have 2 follow-ups. I don't know which order to do this. Candace, maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the Business Volunteer Network and your role in that?
Sure. So the Business Volunteer Network, or BVN, is kind of led with United Way, and I think there's maybe 40 or 45 member businesses, all sizes, from that 5-person to 3,000, and we meet quarterly. I'm the education chair, so I can help determine what topics we discuss. And actually, our next meeting, was kind of serendipitous, is focusing on schools and how you volunteer in schools. So it's school friends through Big Brothers Big Sisters, it's Schools of Hope, it's adopting a school, and just kind of how that, what the opportunities are and how you can get your staff involved. And so BVN tries to do kind of things like that, where we focus on, we've done things around the holidays, where it's, what does your company do for holiday giving? And things like that, about how you can very easily get your staff involved in volunteering, no matter what your size is, and kind of existing programs you can just kind of slide right into. So it's about sharing best practices for volunteering and just kind of having a place to talk and say, oh, well, I do that, but we do it, this way, and it works really well, and things like that. So.
And then Kathy, I know that ideally the model is 1 tutor for 1 student. I know Katrina just kind of talked about, or Kate, I can't remember, sorry, about maybe sharing that responsibility. Could you just maybe, and I know we'll probably get into this afternoon when we actually go through the training, but what is the commitment for a tutor? Because I believe when we were at Schools of Hope, I heard somebody say that really the minimum commitment's like 15 weeks, or I don't know who told me that, but.
So I'm gonna actually let my expert back there, Karen, respond. Thank you, Karen.
If you remember, it's 15 that you talked about really helped to show us that that's kind of that's a core amount of time that we feel needs to happen in order for us to really think that there are some gains happening. It takes a while to get to know a new student and for the student to be working well with our tutor. So our goal is to have every student who is matched get at least 15 sessions. Some of them get 30 and more. So that 15 is really a minimum. We have had some volunteers share their time like you were describing. So that's also possible. That what we want is somebody to be there working with this student on a consistent basis at the same time every week. And so if two people share that responsibility and both are getting to know the student well, we can still see those same kind of gains that we see when it's just a single pairing. Obviously for us, the single pairing is our ideal, and that's what we have most of the time, but we really want to work with these business volunteers and we really want to make this happen. And so we'll be as creative as we need to be to make sure that we can make this happen for the students and give our volunteers a good experience as well.
Move towards maybe the student side for a little bit. Joan, I'm wondering if you could share a story, maybe a specific story of a student that you can think of that has been positively impacted by a tutoring relationship.
So I have been teaching first grade, and the focus in first grade is heavily on learning to read. So we have a reading recovery program in Madison schools, which matches a reading specialist with the kids who are most struggling with reading. Part of the reading recovery program is for the child to practice the lesson that he or she has done that day and to do a 5-10 minute piece of homework, putting together a sentence that the child has written. And we struggle quite a bit with that because many of our most struggling students don't have, as I said before, support at home for whatever reason. So we have matched the Schools of Hope volunteers with the reading recovery students. So they get to, right after their reading recovery lesson, if possible, or sometime during the day, work with a volunteer on doing the homework. So that's, and they also feel that supported by the tutor and feel positive about learning to read. So that's been really great.
So just to share a quick story that we have in our archives, and Karen, this is going to be Hannah's story, so I think you know what I'm talking about. So we had a volunteer, fantastic woman, not a millennial. Much older than that. But she was just wonderful, and she was tutoring students, going into the classroom, working with one student, and I don't know, it was one summer and she was over at Lucier Community Education Center and she was doing some reading with kids in their summer program, and all of a sudden she said, and these are her words, an African prince walked into the room, and she realized this was a young man whom she had worked with in the classroom years ago, and now he was in high school. And with him was another young man, and so he walked up to Hannah and gave her a hug and said, Mrs. Pickett, you are the reason I learned how to read. And I wanted my brother to meet you so that he knew what you meant to me. It was one of those moments for her. She said, you do your tutoring, sometimes you know what happens, sometimes you don't, but to have a student come back years later remembering who you are and what you did, you don't realize the importance that you play. And she said part of it is showing up every day or every week. that they know you're there for them. And that makes a real impact on students, and knowing that somebody really does care and is there to tell them what a good job they do. Another volunteer said her student, this was in Sun Prairie, said, you know, you're the first person to tell me that I did a good job. Now, you know, my heart breaks over some of these, but thank goodness we've got people in the community like yourselves who are willing to put themselves out there and become that person for our students. I'm sure you can remember growing up sort of what that meant to you, likely going home and having your parents a good job, having teachers that supported you, and now, you know, the volunteers in Schools of Hope are doing similar things for students. So with those two stories, there are millions of stories in the city, but really there's a lot of stories like that where just tremendous differences made by volunteers.
Is, you know, we want to be able to, again, be able to sell this to businesses and, you know, help them maybe not only promote internally, but maybe find a way to promote externally as well. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about how we could, you know, businesses or program or whatever could best publicize, you know, business community involvement or the program, or any thoughts on that?
You know, there's a variety of ways, I think, of, you know, looking at that. And, one thing I wasn't precisely clear on is and I had another thought on the Tutor 30 name that I wanted to ask the group a little bit about. And maybe I'll go to that first and then kind of circle back to how it might interact and connect with businesses. The Tutor 30, and again, forgive me, I don't know the background, how long you guys have been working on this and how that came to be. I really like the Tutor 30. I like getting the 30 concept in there. I think really makes a lot of sense, and I think there's great value in that point that, you know, this isn't a 3-hour commitment, you know, every week or multiple times a week. That it's relatively low drag, and I think that the 30 part helps on that. I would have two things on that. I would worry just slightly that just by itself, the Tutor 30 might be misinterpreted or potentially misinterpreted as, oh, they're looking for 30 people to become tutors, would be one thing, or just that it just kind of hangs there a little bit, and I was just sort of scratching out. I think a lot of times what really works on the, you know, and I'm not really a marketer or a, you know, an advertising person, but I'm a newsroom hat, but
Yeah.
a lot of times I think the slogans or the sort of catchphrases, if there's a duality to them, you know, Tutor 30 / something else, you know, Tutor 30 change a life, Tutor 30 touch a kid, Tutor 30, you know, turn it on. Some secondary phrase that would pair with Tutor 30 to have another kind of oomph underneath
Some sort
it.
of action.
Yeah, a little bit of a call to action maybe, or just again, I think both sort of from the pitch point of, you know, and the information sharing point, I think it would be valuable to perhaps come up with a couple of more words that would go with Tutor 30, but also I think it rolls off the tongue and it would work well in, you know, in ways that you want to use that phrase to help people kind of grab onto it and understand really quickly what it is. That was sort of more a straight thought than anything else, and I wasn't sure again. And like I said, I don't want to step on the work that I'm sure has been done to come up with Tutor 30. I think it's a great phrase.
Anybody want to share how we came up with it?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a play on words. United Way has a program called Play 60, and you see it advertised. I think they're partners with the NFL, and 60 minutes a day is a healthy time to get out and exercise. So we kind of just took that, because it's already in existence, and tried to mold it into something that made sense for tutoring, and that's what we came up with, Tutor 30.
Since I made the map and we didn't have any brand yet, you know, we knew Tutor 30, so we know that, again, it's snappy, it's kind of, you can get it. And I remember looking up the Play 60 model just to see, maybe I can kind of crib off it. And they did have a tagline underneath it. I can't remember what it was, but it was like a big, you know, Play 60, but again, Play 60, what does that mean?
Right.
And then underneath it, there was like a tagline that says like a little more clarity, you know,
Yeah,
and
they
it was
also
the
have
NFL,
a
yeah.
stopwatch of sorts,
Yeah,
so you can,
so.
it's clear, it's about time versus.
What does the class think about
we'd love any feedback on the name, project name. I think a good name, I think the tagline will make the difference, I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I think the minutes mark before the 30 will help differentiate that it's time.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I'd like to say from a teacher's point of view, 30 minutes is perfect, because that's the amount of time that a kid can, in elementary school, focus and practice.